In 1920, a Moroccan port worker spoke his final words in Sabir, a hybrid language that had kept empires connected for 4 centuries. Within 50 years, it was gone entirely, erased not by conquest, but by steamships and standardization. In 1550, a merchant ship left Venice bound for Tripoli. Its crew spoke Italian, Spanish, Turkish, and Arabic, 5 languages, no common tongue. By sunset, they'd invented one. Sabir was never written down by design. It lived in the mouth, a pigeon born from necessity, not grammar books. Sailors mixed Italian verbs with Arabic nouns. Merchants borrowed French prepositions and Turkish conjunctions. A speaker might say, "Parlez-moi tu lingua" one moment and "Shukran mon ami" the next. The grammar was loose. The vocabulary was borrowed. The survival rate was perfect. For 4 centuries, Sabir connected the Mediterranean's fractured world. Ottoman merchants used it in Algiers and Tunis. Spanish captives in North African slave camps spoke it to their Turkish guards. French traders in Morocco relied on it. By the 1800s, it was the language of the docks, the actual working language where Italian ship captains, Moroccan stevedores, Arab interpreters, and enslaved people from a dozen nations made themselves understood. We know this because colonial administrators hated it. French officials in Algeria documented Sabir with disdain. They called it corrupted and barbarous. They were right about one thing: it worked too well. In 1870, a linguist named Auguste Dozy published the first serious vocabulary. Maybe 500 words, he estimated. Not a full language, he insisted. Just a tool. But tools can be sacred. Sabir was the language of survival, of enslaved workers negotiating with captors, of merchants sealing deals across faiths, of people who had no other way to say *me* to *you* across the noise. By 1900, perhaps 50,000 people spoke it fluently. Hundreds of thousands understood it. It was the ghost language of Mediterranean trade, invisible because it was too common to notice. Then everything changed. The cracks by 1880, Sabir was already dying. It just didn't know it yet. The Mediterranean had transformed. Steam replaced sail. Steel replaced wood. In 1869, the Suez Canal opened, cutting the voyage from Europe to Asia by 40 days and bypassing the Barbary ports where Sabir had thrived for 4 centuries. The great trading families who had spoken it, the Genoese, the Venetians, the Levantine Christians, were being replaced by national shipping lines with standardized crews. Lloyd's of London began requiring ship's papers in English or French, not the broken polyglot of the docks. Colonial powers drew their lines. France colonized Algeria in 1830 and began erasing Arabic from schools. By 1900, French was the only language of administration. Spain did the same in Morocco after 1912. The Ottoman Empire, which had tolerated Sabir as a practical necessity, was collapsing, defeated in 1918, carved up by treaty. Turkey rebuilt itself as a nation-state. Arabic nationalism rose. These new states did not want bridge languages. They wanted citizens. By 1920, steamship companies had begun hiring exclusively from their own countries. An Italian liner employed Italians. A French packet employed French speakers. The polyglot crews that had created and sustained Sabir for 400 years simply ceased to exist. The linguist William Hine documented this shift in his 1958 fieldwork notes. He found only 12 fluent speakers left in Algiers, all over 65. None had children who spoke it. The warnings were invisible because they came as efficiency, as progress, as the normal weight of history. No one stood on the dock and declared Sabir dead. It simply became useless, then forgotten, then, by 1970, impossible to hear spoken anywhere on Earth. But in the archives of 3 cities, hidden in merchant ledgers and colonial reports, the exact moment of its death was recorded by men who had no idea what they were documenting. Between 1920 and 1970, Sabir simply stopped being spoken. Not all at once, but fast enough that no one noticed until it was gone. The first blow came with steam. By 1920, steamship companies had begun standardizing their crews by nationality. Italian captains hired Italian sailors. French companies preferred French deckhands. The mixed crews that had sustained Sabir for 4 centuries, a Genoese merchant, a Turkish slave, a Greek pilot, an Arab trader, all shouting orders in the same pidgin, these crews dissolved. Sabir had no written grammar, no formal instruction. It lived in the mouths of working people. When those mouths scattered to segregated ships, the language began to die. Colonial powers finished the work. By 1930, France controlled most of North Africa. Britain dominated Mediterranean shipping. Both imposed their own languages, French in Algeria and Morocco, English everywhere. Schools taught only colonial tongues. Port authorities banned Sabir from official documents. A merchant in Algiers in 1932 would have faced bureaucratic pressure to file in French, not in the hybrid pidgin his grandfather had used. The final speakers were old. By 1950, the last native Sabir speakers were port workers in their 70s and 80s, longshoremen in Algiers, dockhands in Casablanca, a handful of retired sailors in Marseille. They had no reason to teach children a dead language. They taught French instead. When these men died, between 1955 and 1970, Sabir died with them. The Swedish linguist Knut Tolkvist recorded speakers in Algiers in 1967. By 1970, he could find almost no one who remembered it fluently. In the archives, though, something strange appears. A single document from 1924 suggests someone had tried to preserve Sabir deliberately, but the attempt itself may have hastened its end. By 1970, Sabir was already a ghost language. The last native speakers, port workers in Algiers, Oran, and Tanya, men in their 70s and 80s, were dying without heirs. Their children had learned French in colonial schools, or Arabic in the independence movements that swept North Africa after 1954. No one had thought to record them systematically until it was too late. When linguist William Haddad conducted fieldwork in Algeria in 1961 and 1962, he found elderly dockworkers still code-switching between Sabir and French, still cursing in that hybrid tongue. But their grandchildren, gone. The language had no written standard, no grammar book, no institution to preserve it. It lived only in muscle memory and maritime habit, and those habits were being erased by diesel engines and containerization. The hole it left was invisible at first. Shipping companies had already standardized their crews by nationality in the 1920s and 1930s. The Ottoman Empire had collapsed in 1922. Colonial administrations from Paris to Madrid had made French and Spanish official in their ports. Sabir became redundant overnight. No conferences mourned it. No governments documented its passing. By the 1960s, when scholars finally noticed what was happening, the language was already dying in real time, audible only in the speech of men who would not live another decade. The scramble to explain came late, almost apologetic. Linguists began publishing papers in the 1970s and 1980s, treating Sabir as a historical curiosity rather than a living emergency. They cited Haddad's recordings. They dug through 16th-century merchant letters, Ottoman trade documents, and French colonial archives for fragments. But the primary evidence was fragmentary by design. Sabir had never been meant to last. It was born from necessity, not nation. And when necessity changed, it simply evaporated into the Mediterranean air. Yet one archive survived the collapse entirely, a collection of recordings made by a single French ethnographer in Morocco between 1963 and 1965, never fully catalogued, never fully heard. In 1961, the linguist William Hine traveled to Algiers. He sat with port workers in their 60s and 70s. He recorded their speech, Sabir, intact, still living on their tongues. Those reels of magnetic tape became the most complete linguistic record we possess. Hine's fieldwork, preserved at the University of Hamburg, captured noun lists, verb conjugations, the actual sound of a language most scholars had dismissed as mere jargon. By then, Sabir was already dying. The younger generation, born after 1920, spoke French or Arabic at home. The steamship companies had standardized. Colonial administrators had decided. No one needed the bridge language anymore. Today, linguists return to Hine's recordings again and again. They listen. They transcribe. In 2003, researcher Peter Backer published a Sabir dictionary based partly on those Hamburg tapes. 63 pages, 800 entries. It is thin compared to the living language. No slang, no maritime curses, no bargaining songs. But it exists. In university libraries in Germany, France, and the Netherlands sit merchant ledgers from the 1,700 Ottoman port documents, letters written in Sabir's hybrid script. The pieces remain scattered. The speakers are gone. We know Sabir lived because ghosts left traces. A word here in a colonial report, a phrase there in a sailor's log, Hine's voice recordings humming in their archival cans. Yet even Hine never published a full grammar. He died in 1997 without releasing his complete findings. Sabir disappeared because the world no longer needed a bridge between strangers. Another file is already open, lost languages still being spoken in the margins of the modern world. Subscribe to the archive for languages that won't survive to be rediscovered.